documentary script. For many people, the story of Christianity in India begins with the arrival of the British Empire. However, history tells a very different story. Today, Christianity is the world's largest religion, followed by more than 2.2 billion people. In India alone, nearly 30 million people identify as Christians. But long before European colonial powers reached Indian shores, Christianity had already found a home in this ancient land. According to early Christian tradition, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ traveled all the way to India in the 1st century A.D. His name was Thomas, better known as Saint Thomas the Apostle. Thomas is often remembered as Doubting Thomas because he initially questioned the resurrection of Jesus. Yet, after becoming convinced of Christ's teachings, he dedicated his life to spreading the message of Christianity across distant lands. Ancient writings, known as the Acts of Thomas, describe his remarkable journey eastward. Been lost over time, it suggests that Thomas arrived in the Indo-Parthian kingdom ruled by King Gondophares. This kingdom extended across regions that today include parts of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and northwestern India. Tradition further states that Thomas eventually traveled to the Malabar coast of southern India, present-day Kerala. There he preached to local communities and established some of the earliest Christian congregations in the region. These early believers later became known as the St. Thomas Christians. Their customs reflected both their Christian faith and the cultural traditions of India. Some accounts even suggest that members of influential families accepted these teachings. It is also believed that St. Thomas spent his final years in India. Tradition holds that he died near present-day Chennai, where a shrine and church were later built at his memory. While historians continue to debate certain details of these accounts, many agree that by the 2nd century, organized Christian communities had already emerged in South India. One of the most fascinating aspects of this early history is the relationship between Christianity and Indian society. The first Christian communities adapted to local customs and social structures. Their names, traditions, and lifestyles often blended naturally with the surrounding culture. For centuries, people of different faiths coexisted with relatively little conflict. Christianity became one of many traditions woven into India's diverse spiritual landscape. Everything began to change during the Age of Exploration. In 1498, Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama arrived in India. By this time, Christianity had become deeply rooted throughout Europe, and European powers were expanding their influence across the globe. Historical records indicate that the Portuguese were aware of existing Christian communities in India even before their arrival. Vasco da Gama himself reportedly claimed that he had come in search of both spices and Christians. At first, relations between the Portuguese and local Christians were friendly. However, tensions gradually emerged. Portuguese authorities attempted to reshape local practices according to European religious standards. Traditional customs were discouraged, and Latin rituals were promoted. As a result, divisions developed between indigenous Christian communities and the newly arrived European Christians. Another significant chapter unfolded during the reign of the Mughal Emperor Akbar. Known for his curiosity about different religions, Akbar welcomed scholars and spiritual leaders from various traditions to his court. In 1580, Jesuit priests from Goa arrived in Agra at the emperor's invitation. The priests presented Akbar with a copy of the Bible. He encouraged open discussions between them and scholars representing multiple faiths. These debates continued over several years and reflected Akbar's broader vision of religious dialogue. Although Akbar never converted to Christianity, he remained interested in its teachings. During his reign, permission was granted for churches to be established in parts of the Mughal Empire. His successors maintained varying relationships with Christian communities. At times, cooperation flourished. At other moments, political tensions led to restrictions and setbacks. Despite these challenges, Christianity endured. When British rule expanded across India. Centuries later, missionary activities increased dramatically. Educational institutions, hospitals, and churches multiplied, contributing to the growth of different Christian denominations, including Roman Catholics and Protestants. By then, Christianity had already been part of India's story for well over 1,000 years. The history of Christianity in India reminds us that civilizations are shaped not only by conquest and empire, but also by journeys, conversations, and cultural exchange. Long before colonial rule, travelers crossed oceans carrying ideas, beliefs, and hopes that would become part of India's rich and diverse heritage. Understanding these forgotten chapters of history helps us recognize that India's identity has always been built through encounters between many traditions, each leaving its own unique mark on the nation's story. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson history offers us. The more we understand our past, the better we understand ourselves.